Names are etched into the heart of a nation, not just because of what they did, but who they were. Francis Lodic Bartels was one of those names. In this documentary, we journey into the life and legacy of a man who helped modern Ghana through service and knowledge. This is the story of Francis Lodic Bartels. In every generation, a name emerges not just for greatness, but for goodness, leadership, and service. One of such names is Mr. Francis Lodic Bartels. He was a mentor, an educationist who rose to the ranks to become a teacher, a housemaster, vice principal, and eventually the first African headmaster of a FLB school. He also became a diplomat and a nation builder. This documentary is not just a story about a life lived, but a life that touched a nation and shaped others. Mr. Bartels was the kind of man who walked with purpose and spoke with principle. He didn't raise his voice often, but when he did, he listened. Francis Lodic Bartels was born on 13 March 1910 in Cape Coast. He hailed from the prominent Bartels family of Elmina, a lineage with deep Euro-African roots. His father, Reverend Charles Henry Bartels, and the mother, Agnes Mensah. This lineage placed young Francis in a rare social position, giving him both privileged access to education and a grounded awareness of his African identity. Seeking information about Francis Lodic Bartels, we are here at Anthem Newsite to ask Mr. C.K. Eshan, a former headmaster of FLB school, about Francis Lodic Bartels. Join us as we go and speak to him a little bit. Did anything on his childhood hint on the life that he led? Detail.
His father was a reverend minister of the church, so he was born into the church. The church founded in FLB. He enrolled as a student of FLB and therefore carried the vision of the church in education and then continued as the head of the school. So we can see him as part of the church and then the school that is the church founded.
Do you think his legacies have been fully implemented?
His legacies fully implemented. Reverend Dr. Bartels was a headmaster during the transition period after the years of Reverend Lockhart, and he carried the vision of Reverend Lockhart after Reverend Lockhart left. Reverend Lockhart moved the school from Mount Hope to the present location. The founding buildings were put up by Reverend Lockhart. So the buildings on top of the hill were put up by Reverend Lockhart. But when Dr. Bartels took over, he also made sure that the little that he inherited, the buildings were expanded and moved the school towards where we now have as the permanent site. The school was initially on top of the hill. Then around 1950, between the 50 early days of the 50s, the part of the school moved down when the enrollment enlarged. So he moved the school from the top of the hill to the present location where we have the domestic site.
He lived by example, discipline, dignity, duty. He didn't just talk about values, he embodied them. Whether it was punctuality, integrity, or kindness, Bartels lived it. In the early years of his educational journey, he attended Methodist Primary School in Cape Coast from 1915 and later had the privilege of attending FLB school. At FLB school, where generations of leaders were formed, Bartels left an indelible mark. He raised academic standard in the school. He then won a King Edward VII scholarship, which enabled him to attend Westminster College, then in London, between 1931 to 1935. He was so intelligent that during his second year, he took a degree at the University of London. In his book, The Persistence of Paradox, Memoirs of F.L. Bartels, his intellectual ability was unmatched when he had to deliberately fail in class to avoid being called names by bullies.
We seek to inquire more information about this great man through our academic headmaster, Mr. Fifi Hope.
So, for those who may not know Mr. Francis Lodik Bartels, what can you tell us about him, the story?
Thank you. Dr. Francis Bartels, I've read about him. I didn't meet him in person, but what I read about him suggests that he was somebody who had a lot of passion for education, and he demonstrated that in many ways. And so it is not a coincidence that even years after his demise, we will still have to talk about him in a bit to present what he did. Yeah.
So, speaking about you reading about Mr. Bartels, have you come across anything that might take us back to his childhood and what might have shaped him to be this great man?
Yes, he, should I say, was or is a very intelligent person. I understand the Enfanson records have his name as far back as I think 1925 when he was in Form 3, and he took a couple of prizes. And if you look at the areas in which he was picking his prizes, I think something in religion, he picked something in Latin, French, English. You could tell that he was somebody who was interested in studies. He also was named as the best scholar, I think, at the ordinary level stage, and you could tell that he was really into his books. It's an example for all of us today to also aspire to be very studious, even whilst we are in school, because I relate excellence in school to life beyond.
His term in office began in 1942 to 1945, then from 1949 to 1961. Thus becoming the first African headmaster of the school. As headmaster, he witnessed both Ghana's independence and republican status. As a leader, he exhibited Lockhart's principles and guidance, since he was trained by him. He single-handedly ordered disorder among students in the school. In Kofi Annan's remarks during Bartels' 100th birthday, he recounts how Mr. Bartels had told him how he should not have started an uprising in the dining hall, but should have come to him to resolve the matter man to man. Excellence should be the hallmark of every educational institution, but for Reverend Bartels, it became the norm in his tenure. As a product of Reverend Lockhart, Bartels didn't just teach, he inspired young principals and students of his time to become great individuals than himself. In one of his quotes, he alludes to the fact that you won't be great until you've produced someone who is greater than you. His philosophy was rooted in empowering young Africans to think critically, act ethically, and engage globally. He believed that education wasn't merely about passing exams, but about shaping conscience and character. This clearly indicates that we don't teach boys to pass, we teach them to stand out. He indeed witnessed this come true when Mr. Alex Saki extended his service to the UN, followed by Mr. Kofi Atta-Annan, making him more fulfilling even in his time. His influence extended the boundaries of the school gates. Bartels became a good advisor, a dedicated leader, and a pillar in formulating national educational policies. His focus was always on morality, merit, and vision. Bartels helped in crafting systems which influences ethical teaching, practice, and leadership. He believed education was the foundation of a free and fair society, and he fought for it. He encouraged teachers to regularly improve upon themselves as well as students. He also introduced extracurricular activities which made students engage in sporting events, clubs and societies, such as the Red Cross and the evangelism groups.
Did you take any lessons from Francis Lodic Bartels?
The work that Dr. Bartels was not only academic. It was not only academic. He made sure that he improved the quality of teachers by encouraging teachers to improve themselves. He also made sure that the school was incorporated with the community by establishing the preaching group and then the Red Cross Society. In fact, the preaching group started evangelism. You'll be surprised to know that the present Ebenezer Church of the Methodist Church at Pseudo was started by the preaching group of Mfansport. So it's a child of Mfansport. It started as a preaching center and then expanded to become the present Ebenezer Methodist Church. And the preaching group of the Scripture Union also went around the villages. That time, Nkamfua, Pedu, Abra, and other things were, I would call them small towns. And the preaching group occasionally had to go there to start to preach to the people around those areas. Then we also have the Red Cross. That when we were in school, Anthem was just a very small community. So every Thursday you have the Red Cross Society coming down to Anthem to treat people with minor injuries and other malaria and other small pains. So the school was not only confined to the top of the hill as an academic institution, but also incorporated was incorporated into the society.
His rich intellect in the aspects of local dialects and culture served as an opportunity to occupy the role of the ambassador to West Germany. His diplomatic duties were marked by tact, intellectual depth, and an unyielding loyalty to Ghana's dignity. He was able to foster bilateral cooperation, deepen cultural exchanges, and present the newly independent Ghana as a partner of equal standing. His activities in UNESCO continue to serve as the foundation for good standing in terms of diplomacy and education. From stories heard and books read about him, Mr. Bartels inspired people to be disciplined and principled.
There was a headmaster, in fact, I enrolled in September, but he had left in April.
Okay.
But he was a landmark, Francis L. Bartels.
Okay.
You know, he was a smallest kind of person, but my goodness, his confidence in Cape Coast was powerful. In fact, when you walk down the streets in Cape Coast, they can look at you and say, Bartels never Norokon.
Oh, wow.
You know, that was then.
That was how big it
Bartels
was.
never Norokon, or someone calls a mischief and they'll say, Bartels number one in Damanda. You know, so that is the milieu in which I grew up, you know.
Yeah.
So he's been I've written about him extensively. And when I wrote a book on Mfanspim, there are chapters specifically devoted to him.
Oh, wow.
And also very bright, one of the most intelligent human beings I ever met.
His influence has shaped several personalities who passed through his tuition, such as Kofi Annan, who was a United Nations Secretary General. Mr. Bartels' influence can be seen in many Ghanaian leaders today. According to Mr. Crosby Kofi Ishan, the influence of Mr. Bartels played a vital role in the formation of educational institutions such as Prempeh College, Kita Secondary School, and Maudi School. Indeed, Bartels' mission, vision, and principles inspired the climate of the above-mentioned secondary schools.
Mr. Bartels has authored books like Fear na School, Roots of Ghana Methodism, Journey Out of African Lace, Indigenous and Higher Education in Tandem, The Persistence of Paradox, Memoirs of F.L. Battels, and also a fancy grammar book of function. The book, Infanspil, The Headmaster Remembers, was the last manuscript of the author, Mr. F.L. Battels. He presented it to Infanspil Old Boys just before his death and charged them to print and endow the school with the royalties and proceeds from the sales. Thus, the book has come at an opportune time when there is a serious debate on the quality of education Ghana ought to have. This book will offer the author's contribution to the debate in the right direction. Infanspil Historical Society would also like to congratulate Infanspil Old Boys Association for making Mr. Battels' dream come true. The book is going to capture not only a man's journey, but a nation's values in the eyes of a legend, whose leadership has brought Infanspil where it is today. It is going to inform and transform all people who read about him in generations yet unborn. It reminds young Ghanaians that we are heirs of greatness and that we must carry it forward. The launching of the book is not going to be just about a book, but a blueprint of Mr. Battels' legacy. Each page of this book constitutes a lesson that can be learned, and that a chapter of this book is a reflection of how secondary education should be looked at in Ghana.
Although I wasn't here while he was headmaster, his legacy has echoed all the way down to my generation. F.L. Battels was a man of vision, and in his time as a student, he was so brilliant, and here he was a master of languages, and he has inspired me. That is why I hold on to one of his famous quotes, which is, and I quote, "When we moved to Kwabuchi Hills, we not just get a new campus, but we got a new vision. It has inspired me to take charge of everywhere I am and to have a vision and foresight." Jane Shekan, he reminds me of all the time.
If I could speak to him today, I would say, "Sir, you didn't just teach us to pass exams, you taught us to pass through life with honor, and we thank you." As we look back at the life of Battels, we don't just remember a man, remember a movement of values, vision, and a captivating voice, emphasizing on the dominance and capabilities of an African child.
Yamaya